There's a certain kind of primal fear that takes over when you realize your child is in danger. It's not like normal fear. It doesn't creep up on you. It slams into you, sharp and sudden, forcing the air from your lungs. That's the fear I felt the day I took my son to the park. And I still feel it now, every time I think about what almost happened. It was a perfect California autumn afternoon, the kind where the air is crisp, but the sun is still warm. I had picked up my 6-year-old son, Daniel, from school, and like always, he begged me to take him to the park before heading home. It was our little tradition, 1 hour of running, climbing, and laughing before dinner. The park wasn't big, just a small playground tucked between some trees, surrounded by a walking path and a rusted chain-link fence. I sat on a bench nearby, scrolling through my phone, occasionally looking up to watch Daniel run around with the other kids. Then I heard it. A voice. Deep. Unfamiliar. Calling my son's name. At first, I barely noticed. Kids called each other's names all the time. But then I heard it again, closer. Danny, buddy. Come here. My stomach twisted. I looked up, scanning the playground, and then I saw him. A man, crouched near the edge of the slide, half hidden behind the metal structure. He was smiling too wide, his arms outstretched, like he expected my son to run straight into them. Daniel had stopped running, one foot slightly raised, like he was deciding whether to go to him. My blood turned ice. I was on my feet in an instant. Daniel, come here. My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. Daniel turned, startled, and jogged toward me. I placed a firm hand on his shoulder, my heart still pounding as I looked back toward the man. He had straightened up, his hands slipping into the pockets of his hoodie. His smile faded slightly, just enough to show that he hadn't expected to be interrupted. I crouched down, keeping my voice even. Do you know that man? Daniel shook his head. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I kept my eyes locked on the man, my grip on my son tightening. Let's go, I muttered. We walked back to the car, and I didn't look back. That whole night, I felt on edge. My mind wouldn't let it go. The outstretched arms. The way he called my son's name like he knew him. But the worst part, the part that kept me awake, came at bedtime. I was tucking Daniel in when he looked up at me, eyes wide and innocent, and asked, Dad, why didn't you let me go talk to my friend? A cold chill spread through my chest. I forced my voice to stay calm. Your friend. Daniel nodded. The man from the park. My fingers clenched the blanket. Daniel, I said carefully, you told me you didn't know him. I don't. Not really, he admitted. But we've been talking. A sharp prickle of fear crawled up my spine. What do you mean, talking? Daniel shrugged. The last few days. At recess. He stands by the fence and waves at me. Today, he said we could play together at the park after school. My stomach dropped. My voice came out hoarse. What else has he said to you? Daniel frowned, thinking. He asked what games I like. He told me I'm really cool. Then, after a pause. Oh, and he said he has a puppy at home. A really fluffy one. My vision blurred with rage. That man had a plan, and I was going to find out who he was. The next day, I left work early. I wasn't about to let my son go to recess without me watching. I parked a block away and waited, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I scanned the fence line, and then I saw him. Same hoodie, same too-wide smile. Leaning casually against the fence, watching the kids play, like he had every right to be there. I got out of the car, my heart pounding. I started walking toward him. He noticed me when I was about 20 feet away. For a split second. His smirk faltered. Then he straightened up, stuffing his hands into his pockets like we were old friends. Hey there, he said smoothly, as if he had been expecting me. Something wrong. I stopped just short of him, fist clenched. Yeah, I said. Why the hell are you talking to my son? His smile widened. I just like kids, he said. Nothing wrong with that, is there? My jaw tightened. You stay the hell away from him. He shrugged. He's the one who talks to me. My rage boiled over. I grabbed the front of his hoodie and slammed him against the fence. Listen to me, I growled. If I ever see you near my son again. A sharp pain ripped through my ribs. I gasped, stumbling back. He had a knife. Small, but sharp enough that I felt the burn where he nicked me. He held it low, out of view from the other parents. His smirk was gone. I'd be real careful, he murmured. My vision tunneled. Every instinct screamed at me to take him down, Al. But I couldn't risk it. Not with kids nearby. I let go of his hoodie, breathing hard. He took a step back. Then, this is your only warning, he said. And he turned, walked away, disappearing down the street like nothing had happened. I reported him, filed a police report, told the school, did everything I could. But the man was gone. No one else had seen him. No cameras had caught him. The police said they'd keep an eye out, but without a name or a clear threat, there wasn't much they could do. Daniel still talks about him sometimes, like he was just another kid at the playground. I don't tell him the truth. That man had a plan, and I don't think it was the first time he tried it. I just thank God I was there to stop him, and I hope and pray that no other kid falls for his smile. I always thought I'd be safe in my own home. That's where we're supposed to feel the most secure, right? 4 walls, a roof, a locked door between you and the rest of the world. But now I know it. A locked door means nothing. Not when something's already inside. It started with the footsteps. Soft, almost imperceptible, coming from the hallway at night. At first, I blamed it on the house settling. It was an old place, after all, built in the 1950s, creaky floors, drafty windows. But after a few nights, I realized. It wasn't just the floorboards shifting. The footsteps were too deliberate, too slow, like someone was taking their time, like someone was watching. I lived alone. A small, 1-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing special. I worked nights at a warehouse, so by the time I got home at 3 a.m., the world was silent. At first, I only noticed the footsteps when I was in bed, but then I started hearing them while I was still awake. I'd be brushing my teeth, and I'd hear them just outside the bathroom door. I'd be watching TV, and I'd hear them shuffling just behind the couch. One night, I whipped around fast enough to make my head spin, but there was never anything there. At least, nothing I could see. Then came the whispers. Soft, indistinct, right outside my bedroom door. I could never make out the words, but I could feel them, like someone was standing just on the other side, muttering to themselves, or maybe muttering to me. One night, I'd had enough. I stormed out of my bedroom, flicking on every light in the house. "Hello," I shouted. Silence. The air felt too thick, like the house itself was holding its breath. I checked every corner, every closet, under the bed. Nothing. But when I went back to my room, the closet door was open, and I knew for a fact I had closed it. I barely slept after that. I started leaving the TV on, volume low, just enough to break the silence. I convinced myself it was just stress, that I was overworked, sleep-deprived, that it was all in my head, until I found the note. It was waiting for me on the kitchen counter one morning. A single piece of crumpled paper, torn from my own notebook. For words, written in shaky, childlike handwriting. "Why won't you see me?" My skin crawled. I lived alone. No one had been inside. At least, no one that I had seen. I checked every door, every window, all still locked. But I wasn't alone. Someone had been inside while I slept. And worse, they were getting frustrated. I called my friend, Evan, who worked security. Told him I needed him to check my house. He came over that night, bringing a thermal camera. "If someone's hiding in your walls, we'll find them," he said with a grin. He was joking. I wasn't laughing. We checked everywhere. The attic, the crawl space. Nothing. Then, Evan scanned my bedroom, and his face went pale. "Dude," he muttered, "there's a heat signature in your closet." I couldn't breathe. I turned toward the closet door. It was closed, but something was standing inside. Evan grabbed my arm. "You want me to open it?" I didn't. I really didn't. But I nodded anyway. Evan reached forward and yanked the door open. Nothing. Just my jackets and shoes. Evan exhaled. "Damn thing must be glitching," he muttered, shaking the thermal camera. But as he turned it back toward the closet, the heat signature was still there, standing right in front of us. But we couldn't see it. I slammed the door shut. We left the house that night, and I never stepped foot in there again. I didn't sell it. Didn't tell anyone. I just walked away. Got a new place. A new life. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up to the feeling of someone standing in the room. And when I look toward my closet, I swear I see the door creaking open, like something finally found me again. I should have never picked up that hitchhiker. I've always believed in helping people when I can. You see someone stranded on the side of the road, you help. That's just how I was raised. But that night, driving through the Sierra Nevada mountains on my way back from a work trip, I learned that some people don't need help. Some people are just waiting for someone like me to stop. It was close to midnight when I saw her. A woman, standing on the side of the road, just beyond a curve. She was wearing a thin white dress, way too light for the cold mountain air. Her long black hair hung limp around her face, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. No car, no luggage, just her, alone in the dark. I felt a pang of concern. Maybe she had been in a wreck. Maybe she had walked miles in search of help. Slowed down, rolling down my window. "Are you okay?" I called. She didn't answer at first. She just stood there. Then, slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes locked onto mine. And she smiled. A slow, unnatural smile, like she was surprised I had stopped. Then, softly, "Can you give me a ride?" Something felt off. My instincts were screaming at me to hit the gas and leave. But I couldn't just drive away. It was cold. She had no coat, no phone. If I left her out here alone, and something happened, I'd never forgive myself. So I unlocked the passenger door. "Yeah, get in," I said. She moved too quickly. One moment, she was outside, standing in the dark. The next, she was sliding into the seat beside me, closing the door without making a sound. I swallowed hard, forcing a polite smile. "Where are you headed?" She turned to look at me, and the moment I saw her face, I regretted everything. She wasn't quite right. Her features were too sharp, her skin too pale, almost translucent under the glow of the dashboard lights. And her eyes, dark, too dark, like there weren't any whites, just endless black voids. I forced myself to keep driving. "Where do you need to go?" I asked again, gripping the wheel. She didn't blink. "Anywhere," she whispered. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. For the first few miles, she didn't say much. She just watched me, occasionally glancing out the window, as if she didn't recognize the road, like she hadn't been here before. I tried to shake the unease. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she had been out here for hours, freezing, barely holding on. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. "You should slow down," she murmured. I frowned. "Why?" Her lips curled into that too wide smile again. "Because of the turn." My stomach dropped. "What turn?" Then my headlights hit it. A sharp, deadly curve, the kind that led straight off the cliffside. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding. The car skidded, tires screeching against the asphalt. We stopped just inches from the edge. Breathing hard, I turned to look at her, but she was already looking at me. "That was close," she whispered. And she was smiling. Like she knew. Like she had been waiting to see what I'd do. I was done. I didn't care who she was or why she was out here. I needed her out of my car. I forced my voice to stay calm. "We're close to a town. I'll drop you off at the next gas station." She didn't answer. She just turned to face the window again, like she was listening for something. Then, softly, "You should lock the doors now." A sharp prickle of fear crawled up my spine. I swallowed. "Why?" Her fingers twitched against her lap. "They like to follow me." I locked the doors. The soft click of the locks echoed in the silent car. I kept driving. Faster now, my pulse roaring in my ears. I didn't want to ask, didn't want to know, but the words left my mouth anyway. "Who follows you?" She smiled. "You'll see." And then, the back seat creaked. I froze. Didn't turn around. Didn't blink. The air felt wrong now, thick, heavy, like something else was here. A new weight in the car. My fingers tightened around the wheel. I glanced at the rearview mirror, and my chest seized in terror. A hand, pale, thin, resting on the headrest behind me, long fingers curling into the fabric. I slammed the gas. The woman beside me laughed softly, like she had been expecting this. The road blurred past me. Trees, signs, darkness. I just needed to make it to the next town. I could already see the distant glow of streetlights ahead. But when I turned to tell her, she was gone. The seat beside me was empty. The door had never opened, like she had never been there at all. My breath came out in ragged gasps. I gripped the wheel, refusing to look in the mirror again. I just kept driving. Faster, faster. Then my phone buzzed. A single notification. No caller ID. Just a text message. I hesitated before looking. The screen glowed in the darkness, displaying just 2 words. Wrong turn. And in the rearview mirror, something moved. I never liked that house. It was too quiet, too still, like the walls were holding their breath. I should have trusted my instincts, because by the time I realized something was wrong, it was already too late. My sister, Nicole, had just gone through a messy divorce, and she needed a place to stay. I offered her the guest room in my house. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she got back on her feet. But a few days turned into weeks, then months. I didn't mind. Not at first. until I realized she was sleeping with the lights on. One night, I woke up to get some water and noticed her bedroom door was open. A thin strip of light spilled into the hallway. That was weird. Nicole was usually a deep sleeper. I peeked inside. She was curled up under the blankets, fast asleep. But the lamp on her nightstand was still on. I almost turned it off. Then I noticed her face. Even in sleep, her brows were furrowed. Her hands clenched into tight fists, like she was having a nightmare. I quietly backed out and shut the door. Told myself it wasn't a big deal. But the next morning, over breakfast, I asked her about it. "Why'd you sleep with the light on?" Nicole froze mid-bite. Her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. Then she forced a small laugh. "I don't know. Just a habit, I guess." But she wouldn't look at me, and I knew she was lying. A few nights later, I woke up again. 3:12 a.m. The house was silent, but something felt off. Then I heard it. A faint click, click, click coming from the hallway. Slow, rhythmic, like fingernails tapping against wood. I sat up, my skin prickling. The sound was coming from Nicole's room. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. Then, a shuffle, like someone moving inside. I knocked softly. "Nicole." No answer. I pushed the door open now, and my stomach dropped. Nicole was sitting upright in bed, staring at the closet. The lamp was still on, casting deep shadows across her face. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, like she was awake but not awake. I took a step closer. "Nicole." She didn't react. I followed her gaze toward the closet door. It was open an inch. I felt a cold wave of nausea roll over me. I reached for her shoulder. The moment I touched her, she gasped. Her whole body jerked, like I had just pulled her out of deep water. She whipped toward me, eyes wild with fear. "Did you see it?" she whispered. My mouth went dry. "See what?" Nicole turned back toward the closet. But it was empty now. The next morning, she refused to talk about it. She just looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Hands shaky as she sipped her coffee. I didn't push her. I figured it was just stress. Until I started hearing the scratching. At first, I thought it was rats. Little skittering noises in the walls at night. But the more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't coming from inside the walls. It was coming from inside Nicole's closet. I tried to ignore it. Until one night, I woke up to something different. A whisper. Soft. Right outside my door. I held my breath, my heart pounding. I listened. The voice was faint, almost too quiet to hear. But I caught the words. "Let me in." I sat up so fast my vision blurred. The hallway was pitch black. I couldn't see a damn thing. But I felt something standing there. Watching. Waiting. I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight ow. And the moment the light flooded the hallway, there was nothing there. I barely slept that night. The next morning, Nicole looked even worse. Pale. Like she hadn't slept in weeks. I wasn't going to ignore this anymore. I sat across from her at the kitchen table. I didn't ask. I told her. "Something is in that room." She didn't deny it. Her hands trembled as she placed her coffee cup down. Then she whispered. "I know." She told me everything. She had started sleeping with the lights on the first night she moved in. She didn't know why. She just felt like something was in the room with her. Watching. Waiting. At first, it was just a feeling. Then she started waking up with bruises. Long, thin bruises on her arms, like fingers had been gripping her. And then she started seeing it. A shape in the closet. Not every night, but some nights when the lamp flickered just right. She'd catch a glimpse of something too tall, too thin, standing inside. Never moving. Never speaking. Just watching her. I felt sick. I ran upstairs, storming into her room. And yanked the closet door open. Nothing. Just a few hanging clothes. An old shoebox. A single dusty mirror leaning against the wall. My reflection stared back at me. But for some reason, I felt like it wasn't alone. That night, we locked the closet. Pushed a dresser in front of it. I didn't care if it was stupid. We just needed it shut. The house was silent. For the first time in weeks, I almost felt safe. Until, just before dawn. I woke up to Nicole screaming. I ran to her room, shouldering the door open. She was on the floor, shaking, staring at the closet. The dresser was pushed aside. The closet door was wide open. And the mirror inside wasn't reflecting the room. It was reflecting something else. Somewhere dark. Somewhere that wasn't here. And just before Nicole slammed it shut, I swear to God, I saw something crawling toward us from the other side. We moved out the next day. Left everything behind. Didn't sell the house. Didn't go back. I don't know what was in there. I don't want to know. But sometimes, late at night, when I pass by mirrors, I feel like something on the other side is still watching. Waiting. Please like and subscribe. Every bit of support means the world.